Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen.
With me today is abundance teacher and money coach, Jody Lynn Craven.
This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today.
Jody Lynn, before we got started, you and I were chatting as we were waiting for our guest to join us, and we were talking about how this past Friday, there's been a lot of chatter on YouTube by channelers and psychics and so forth, talking about how March 21st was this great big transition day where I think the way they were describing it is there's a big surge in energy, and there's like a divide that starts to happen where you either end up being somebody who's making changes in your life and growing into the, toward fifth dimensional life and thinking and so forth, or you stay stuck where you are. And that was the general idea of the message. And I honestly, when I heard it, I said to myself, yeah, right, sounds like marketing to me. But I asked you and a few others to kind of pay attention to see what happened on Friday. And you reported to me that you've been noticing some changes. So I don't know. I kind of get the feeling based on what you're telling me that we're going to start seeing changes, not just in life, but here on the program. Like there's going to be some shifting going on. I mean,
absolutely.
Get that sense?
Totally. I think, the Great Awakening was already upon us, but maybe this is like next level gear or something like that. Like this is high gear. I don't know. It feels like things have shifted for sure.
I mean, just if people could have heard the way you were talking to me, just the tone of your voice, the excitement that was in your voice told me that, oh, wow, Jody Lynn's bought into this. Like there's something going on here. And we know that this Great Awakening has been going on. It's been going on for decades now. But apparently there's been a transition that really happened on Friday. So I got to pay closer attention.
Yeah.
It's going to be good stuff. And we may even learn some of it from our guest today. Dr. Nona Djavid is, she has a very interesting background and a very interesting thing that she does. She basically helps people to make quantum leaps in their mindsets, their businesses and so forth. And I got to think that this energetic shift is going to tie into what she talks about in some way, but we'll find out. So Dr. Djavid, first of all, welcome for joining us on the program today. We really appreciate that. How you doing?
Yes, thank you for having me. And I want to say that high gear you're talking about right now is perhaps it's the next quantum leap to be made.
Yeah,
Couldn't
sure.
have said it better. Yeah.
Well, actually, maybe that's the way we get started here. Why don't we talk about, what we're talking about? What exactly do we mean when we say taking a quantum leap?
Okay, that's a great place to start. So a quantum leap in quantum physics is when a particle moves from one layer to the next layer. Now, that's a really simple concept to understand. I think even if you don't remember your physics from third grade, you probably understand what that is. However, what's really important about the quantum leap in itself is that it does not require more work for the particle to go from one layer to the next layer. It actually, the only thing that's required for the particle to quantum jump is a different energetic state of that particle. So if you zoom out on that one and you bring us here today, if we're looking to make a quantum leap, traditionally in the 3D world, what we have been doing is doing a lot of things, right? Like working really hard and making the things happen and efforting and sort of proving our worth, if you would, to get to the next layer, quote unquote, to get to that next level of success, of the depth in your relationship and health and the body. Different people want different things, but I find, and I've learned over the past decade of studying quantum physics, universal truths, and really diving into my own personal experience, that process requires a lot less of the mechanics of the doing and a lot more of an energetic shift, or at least it makes it a lot juicier. Because I've done it both ways. I've done things by efforting and making things happen. I've also tapped into what it means to energetically shift and make a quantum leap happen from one timeline into a whole nother timeline.
Okay. Well, actually, then that perhaps means we need to take another step backward and have you give us a little bit more of your background. Tell us how you ended up been on this path in the first place. And I know you've got a chiropractic background because you have the DR in front of your name there. But tell us what's behind all of this. What led you to become who you are today?
Man, okay.
You only have 5 minutes. No, I'm kidding.
Well, let me take you back to when I was 5 years old. No, I'm kidding. I'll make it short and relevant to this conversation. I grew up in Iran and I moved here to the United States. I barely spoke a word of English. There were some things going on at that time, but not to get into it. But let's fast forward. So came here when I was 16 years old, and there was this push for success, for some definition of success. And I think no matter where you live, watching this or listening to this, there are some standards that the matrix, society, your community, your parents, your friends, your teachers kind of give us a frame for what success should look like. Typically, it's like, go to school, get good grades, start a job, start a business, go to a good school, graduate, make sure you're doing good in life and make sure you get married and have children. There's these lines you gotta kind of have to stay within. And for me, being the firstborn and a couple of other components, and I think even moving here as a teenager, I was very much the type A that wanted to make the things happen. So I was the A+ student in school. I studied neurology at Berkeley. I went to chiropractic school, opened up my practice. I had a really successful business, got married, had my first child. And by the definition of what was out there, I was successful. Like you could.
Okay. Congratulations, by the way.
Well, thank you. Except I wish I could say that was the case, and that's how I felt internally. But I remember I had this moment as I'm running this successful practice, and as I have all the things checked off of the list, right? This one particular day that I'll share about is I had my first child. So this is about 10 years ago. He's almost 10, and I put my son to sleep. He was an infant. Seemed like his fifth nap of the day at like 10 a.m. And I took a call with my staff. I had a team of 13 people and went over some numbers, some details, just like a very normal average day. And then I walked myself into the walk-in closet and I shut the door and I shut the light and I sat there next to the wall and I held my knees to my chest and I just started sobbing.
Wow.
And of course there was, postpartum hormones were part of it, but I think it went beyond that because I think it was just like a pivotal moment where I made this recognition that this life that I had built, that I was told I was going to build, and it was going to be so successful, and I was going to be happy and fulfilled and in love, in my personal relationship and business, I would have freedom and all of these things, except none of those things I had felt. I think I had like a very real moment of this life that I worked so hard to build by efforting. It seemed like I had just brick by brick, just created this isolated space for myself. And it's funny that I was in a closet because, it's almost like this dark space somehow gave me safety to feel my feelings instead of creating numbness around it or bypassing it or setting the next goal or vision for where I'm headed. And ultimately, it was in that closet where now looking back, I feel like it was the womb for a rebirth where I had my moment and I made a decision to not do things the way that I had been done or the way that the world around me was telling me to do. And so to find an alternative, to find something that was going to be slightly different or maybe wildly different. And I also had a vision for the life that I wanted to live. I had a vision for, the level of freedom I wanted to experience in my business, how I wanted to contribute, the impact I wanted to have. I wanted to be in love. I wanted to travel the world with my children. I wanted to volunteer whenever I want to and not be limited with, a Sunday here and there. So, and I think the pivotal moment was making a decision to saying yes to the vision instead of thinking, how am I going to make this happen? And that moment really led me to figuring things out and quantum leaping in the process. And, we're here a decade later chatting about it.
You said that last bit so easily and so effortlessly. That was a big deal. That last bit that you just talked about, that was a really big deal. You just said, well, I paid attention to the vision rather than trying to figure out hey, how about that?
It was, yeah. And then to walk out of the closet and continue to say yes to it. When the voice says, you're not worthy of it, you can't do it, how are you going to do it? Who are you to do, who do you think you are? Who are you to have this big vision? Or maybe you're not deserving of it, or maybe you should be grateful for what you have. I mean, there's so much of that monkey voice that you need to shut down. And I think I just, instead of shutting down the monkey voice, I just kept saying yes to the vision. Yes to the vision.
Why do you think you did that? I mean, because that's not the way everybody's going to react to that.
I don't think it was. I think it was because I was in such a dark place in that moment that there was just nothing else to do. I couldn't do it.
Your only option at that point.
No other option.
Okay.
Yeah, either I would go do everything I had been doing and continue in that path, and if I future paced myself into what my life would look like, it'd be very predictable, and I'm not sure I would have made it.
Interesting. Jody Lynn, does any of this sound familiar?
Oh yeah. Hey, you're me. I just wasn't in the closet. I feel like my turning point was many turning points were more destructive. Like I'm sure that it was very painful to go through what you went through, and I don't want to underestimate that. But it seemed so clean the way that you describe it. Like you went into the closet, you cried, had a vision, we're like, okay, let's go. And walked out. I was like, parallel to my journey, I was a lot more stubborn and I felt a lot more bloody, like battled in that moment between my head and my heart for that vision. And I, like Walt was saying, it's miraculous that you said yes and you just kept saying yes to that vision. I think it takes a bountiful amount of courage to continue to do that. And I think that's where I've struggled the most, was to continue to say yes, even when the whole world is telling you no.
Yeah. And thank you for that. I definitely don't want to make it sound like it's overnight, or it's for anybody who's listening. This was 10 years ago. I ended up, I was in a marriage that wasn't working, and I ended up having another child. I have a 5-year-old now. Got out of that marriage. Like, the process, I think like on day to day, it's almost like moment by moment. What am I choosing? Am I going to choose the experience I want to experience? Am I going to choose the old life? And in it, there's a lot of death that happens in the process of a quantum leap, where you have to really let go of so many parts of you. And again, it may have been the moment in the closet, but man, was it so painful getting to that moment. It may seem like an overnight decision, but yeah, I definitely don't want people to think like this is an overnight thing. Just take these 4 steps. You're going to quantum. And we're 10 years later talking about it as if it was like, just walk into the closet and give it a good cry. You'll be good.
Where's this magic closet that takes you to Narnia and back?
I'd like to get into that magic closet.
I appreciate you sharing that, because obviously it was a lot more and it's been a decade. But I think that a lot of people, when they listen to stories like yours, they just pick up the highlight reel, she just made a decision and then her life was beautiful. And there's a lot of misconception of like making that decision and saying yes to that vision, and then everything is rosy and perfect and your life is beautiful and it's never hard again, which is not the reality. And you know that, you just said that, like there was a lot of hard stuff in between. And and hard stuff every day, that I'm sure that death of those parts of you that kept you in that old layer or that old level that needed to go.
Yeah, absolutely. The death and the rebirth are, it's like, I mean, if you've ever given birth to children, or if you've watched somebody or had somebody close to you experience that, it's like the contractions of, as you're giving birth, those are painful, but one builds up upon the next one, and eventually you have the fruit of your labor.
Literally.
And they say it was worth it. They say that you don't feel the pain after that, like it just is a distant memory or something. I'm hoping to have a child, one of these days, but I just keep holding on to that they say you don't really remember the pain.
Well, they remind you of the pain on daily basis in other ways.
True.
Yeah.
Well, life is good at that, actually. And we live in a, not just in this culture, but cultures around the world. We live in cultures that love to keep revisiting pain over and over and over and over and over.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, look at our entertainment, look at the movies, look at television, look at, all the video games. They're all based in the pain, for goodness sake.
I know. And I think there's distinction to be made between like identifying with the struggle and the pain that you have gone through versus this is part of my story, and having it be fully integrated into wisdom versus I identify as the old version of me that went through that pain, or I identify with the, with the pain or the story of the struggle.
Mm-hmm.
It's also true, I believe, and I base this on having done this podcast for 12 and a half years and hundreds of interviews and so forth, and hearing the same pattern play out over and over again. People going through some sort of crash and burn, trial, tribulation, that kind of thing, coming out the other side, learning something from it, the wisdom that you're referring to, and then realizing, oh my God, I got to share this with the world. And then they do that. They write a book, they create a course, they become a coach, they do something to kind of move that piece along. And the common theme there every single time is they went through something really, really horrible. And while they would never want to live it again, boy, are they glad that it happened, because they learned so much from it.
Yeah, man, that contrast is big. Like knowing, I remember being in my marriage and feeling so disconnected from my ex-husband and feeling so lonely in my marriage that the contrasts of that, the neglect I experienced in that marriage, and this is not about him. I obviously participated in that partnership. But that contrast is the sole reason that I'm in a really incredible marriage now. So the pain we experienced, it's like the day I was in the closet, like you asked me what made me, make a shift. It was like, well, I didn't want to be there anymore. I got to the bottom of the rabbit hole, and it was like, don't want that. So the contrast was like, if I don't want that, then what do I want, and how do I get there?
Mm-hmm. And why do we call it a quantum leap?
I think probably just from quantum physics, maybe like the reason we would call it. But the way I perceive it and how I've personally experienced it is, I was just having this conversation with somebody else, is you're in one particular timeline, and this particular person I was talking to is a business owner, chiropractor, has a certain level of success in her business, relationship, whatnot. And she says, I want to exit out of my business and I want to do this other thing that I want to do that's totally unrelated to chiropractic. And I'm having this conversation with her, and the way I describe the quantum jump in her case, and I think this relates to everybody, is that you're in one timeline. Like, this is where I'm at. Like, where I was back then was the chiropractor in the business that I was in. And if I had stayed in that timeline, I would have had a very predictable future at the end of that timeline. I would have done certain things that would have been really juicy, and I would have done certain things that would have brought a level of pain. I've experienced certain relationships in that timeline and whatnot. And what a quantum jump allows you to do by shifting your energetics and embodying the next level version that you'd like to experience is it allows you to jump that timeline literally into a whole nother timeline of life. So, I mean, imagine if today I made a decision, I'm going to get into real estate. Okay. So I first have to let go of all of my old identities of being the teacher and being a guest on your podcast and whatnot. And then now I have to tap into what it means to be a real estate agent. And in this reality, by choosing that identity, now my future is going to look different. The experiences of life that I have are going to be different. And it has to be drastic enough. Like I can't go from being the chiropractor in business to being the chiropractor in business who also works with acupuncturists or something like that. It's got to be juicy enough and different.
That was more like a quantum stumble than a quantum leap.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. I love that. Exactly.
So the key element of a quantum leap is that it's a big change. It's a shift that's on a large scale.
Yes, exactly. As a matter of fact, up until the closet moment, if we call it that, up until that moment, I had been setting the next level goals, right? Like I'm going to have a smart vision. I'm going to do this in my business. I'm going to do this in my relationship. And in the moment where I had the vision in the closet, the vision that I had was so unreasonable from the place that I was sitting. That vision was like, you're going to be in love. You're going to travel the world. You're going to live in 2 different continents. You're going to learn a new language. You're going to world school your kids. You're going to have more impact. You're going to have more contribution. From where I was sitting in the closet, so unreasonable. Not unreachable, just completely outside of what would have been reasonable for the version of me in the closet. So as a matter of fact, the very first step of a quantum leap is to have an unreasonable vision. So in the process, you get to evolve to be the next version of yourself. Because oftentimes we set like you said, the quantum stumble.
Yes.
You're quantum stumbling. I'm going to use that now. That doesn't require you to become a different version of yourself. That doesn't require an evolution. You're just really doing more things. Maybe you're doing things a bit smarter and you're getting to that next level, but it's definitely not a quantum jump.
So I think it's safe to say then that if we're talking about a quantum jump or a quantum leap, we're talking about something that's absolutely bonkers.
Totally crazy. As a matter of fact, I have 2 criterias for this unreasonable vision.
Okay.
One is that you have no freaking idea how to get there. You can't YouTube it. You can't find someone who's done it. You can't figure it out. It's just so outside of the matrix, so outside of the box. And the second criteria is that it has to activate your nervous system. Basically has to put you in a panic, like the voice that says, you can't do this. How can you do this? Who are you to do this? Those are the 2 criterias.
I call that the WTF voice.
Yeah. You're giving me all this verbiage. I'm going to be WTF voice. It has to be activated. Because in the process, wherever you're sitting in your version of the closet, here you are, your nervous system actually feels safe here. So if I'm going to make the unreasonable safe, I've got to define it. And I've got to mentally rehearse it. So then I give that to my nervous system on repeat. So now I feel safe going there. And I feel safe maybe multiple stumbles over to the next level, and eventually a quantum leap on its way. Very
interesting. Have you explored this in the way that she's describing, Jody Lynn? I mean, you have explored all kinds of stuff. I already know that, but I'm wondering, have you thought about it in terms of this large transition leaping approach?
Yeah, and the timeline side of things, definitely. I've felt that shift, experienced that energetic shift throughout different spaces and time. But what I think is really exciting about what you're saying is the way that you kind of broke it down, having that unreasonable vision, because I'm pretty good at that. And I'm pretty used to that. And that's something that I've done my whole life, head in the clouds. I'm always you know, in the clouds in space, like, oh, I'm going to do this. But I love that you've talked about the 2 criteria, the no idea how you're going to get there. And I think what resonates with me about that idea is when you have no idea how to get there, it's obviously going to activate the nervous system and teach you a whole bunch, which is the next step. But with the first step, I feel like the more unreasonable it is, the more that I personally can let go of the how and just step into the magic of the energy of it and allow the energetic force of me and the connection that I have with the universe and the universal energy move. Like, well, over the last couple of weeks, we've been talking about a lot of shifts that I've been having and healing that I've been doing. And, you know, I got into a car accident last year, just to kind of give you a backstory, Nona. And over the last couple of months, it's been like slow down. And it's so funny because everything that I'm channeling and that I'm downloading in these moments over these last couple of weeks is to flow with nature. I actually have this written in front of me on a sticky note: aligned with the natural world, channeling electrical forces, a conduit between the seen and unseen. And I feel like that's exactly what you're tapping into when you have that unrealistic or that larger than life vision. Oh, I just got goosebumps. Yeah, so I've never heard somebody say it in that way. And it's almost like you gave me permission to go bigger, because usually people are like, Jody, be a little more realistic.
No, I'm usually the one being like, yeah, let's go bigger. Let's expand on that. Let's give it some wings. What else do you want to experience? And I think here's the difference. I loved what you said about, well, many things I liked about what you said. The quote that you read, to me, what that means is the trust and the surrender. And having something that's unreasonable, I think the distinction I want to make here is that the thing that's unreasonable, but it's authentically yours. Because you could, I come across this often, people will come in and they'll be like, I want to, you know, after I left that closet moment, not overnight, but after a while and a bunch of different things I went through, but I switched my business model, just to give you an example. And I moved into a part-time $1 million business. So I started my first part-time $1 million business. Then I started a whole nother company, 3 different locations, brick and mortar, another 7 figures coming in, semi-passive. So as I was going through that process, there were pieces of the equation that were authentic to me, and there were pieces of the equation that were a borrowed dream. And so as I share that with people, people come and they say, you know, I have a mastermind called Part-Time $1 Million Mastermind. People are like, I want to have a part-time $1 million business. And my first thing is, I know I named this business that, but I don't think that's what you want. Tell me what you really want. So it's really important to distinguish between what is yours and what is the voice or the noise that's coming in. And when you combine that authenticity, that really listening in and being like, is this the thing that I want, or is this the thing that's cool, or I wanted when I was 14, or it was nice, or my cousin had it and I want it.
Or you're supposed to want it.
Yeah.
Supposed to want it. Thank you. Yes, exactly. So you combine that with the unreasonable. Now you have the full wholeness of a permission to let go of the how and to focus on becoming the version that is in alignment with where you're headed.
That's one of the biggest challenges I think we all face is how do we not only steel ourselves, I guess you could say, to even consider the idea of a quantum leap, but also how do we decide what we want that quantum leap to be? Because we're really good at being swayed by what other people tell us.
Totally.
We're really good at that. I mean, if you're going to have a skill, that's probably not the best one to have, but we all have it.
I would love, I was once asked on a podcast, I said, what do you think your superpower, what superpower would you want? And I was like, I would love to know what is mine. What's a thought that is mine versus what I've picked up in the consciousness of the world. Really fascinating. Like, who would I be without, everything swimming in all this stuff that's in the consciousness?
I know that, speaking for myself, one of my biggest challenges over the years has been not so much to distinguish in that way, but rather to accept that I have already distinguished it. And what I was distinguishing was not going to lead to what I was typically told I should be going after. In fact, it was probably going to move against it. It was probably going to work against the ideals.
Yes.
I can't tell you how many times that has pissed me off in my life.
Oh, I bet.
But it plays out over and over again.
Yeah.
And that's the other part. The more that I try to run away from it, the more it insists on showing up.
There's the lesson right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, mine has been a lot of times the fear of rejection, the fear of being rejected, going against the grain. Like, I'm supposed to want these things. All of my friends at a certain point, they all wanted these things and were telling me I should go in this direction, like stepping away from that. And I struggled with that a lot. I would love for you to speak on tips, tricks, whatever around that area. If you know.
I don't know that I'll say something profound on that one that will help your quantum leap, but I will say now getting into and working with and doing it myself personally and seeing it in my students, tapping into their unreasonable lives and into their vision for their lives, there's one common denominator. Every time you are on your way to a quantum leap, on the way to the quantum leap, okay, so before you actually jump, just around the corner is the fear fence, right? So I teach this where you're about to jump, there's the fear fence, there's the fear field, and then there's the fear fence, and then you make the jump. You're still in the fear field, because even after you jump, you're like, what if I should have not jumped? Totally. Should have stayed safe. But anyways, my point is, before you even approach the fear field, here's the indication. So it's a reframe more than anything else. The people in your life that may judge you, and you may have people that love you and care about you, telling you what you're doing is wrong or thinking what you're doing is wrong. You, instead of looking at it, again, it's just a reframe, looking at it and going, fear of judgment, I go, I must be on track for a quantum leap. So it's reframing judgment for, you know what, there's got to be a quantum. If the fear of judgment is coming up, I'm about to jump, or I have the ability, right? I have I'm empowered to jump. And it's funny because, when I interview my students or talk to them and I say, when was the last time you made an unreasonable decision or took an unreasonable action or had a quantum leap? Every single one of them, if you dig a little bit deeper, they will tell you that there were people or a person in their lives that completely disagreed with what they should be doing. And some were people that deeply cared about them, and some were people that didn't care about them, and they were coming from a place of fear, judgment, whatever. But either way, you have those people, or you have those people in your mind, conversations with those people in your mind, or how you might be perceived. You go, that's what it is.
The second category, that's me. I'm really good at second guessing myself. I can second guess myself better than anybody I know. And I've turned it into an art form on many occasions.
Yeah.
But it makes life difficult because when you're constantly second guessing yourself, you're stopping your own. It's almost like you start to take the leap and you're in midair, like, no, I want to go back.
It's safer. It's safer back there, right? Your nervous system is safe back there. So, and I think something I teach my students is, instead of trying to just jump like in the 3D, you just literally jump and you're like, let me just jump and let me, what do they tell you? Fear is like doing it even though while you're feeling it, all of these things, right? All of these quotes on Instagram around fear and jumping. Anyways, my thought process is different. Because I've done it that way. And it really hasn't been all that productive for me. But what I've learned is instead of pushing through, like pushing the boulder up the hill and like facing the fear or jumping with fear, what if instead I just focused on the outcome so that I can get my nervous system to actually feel safe in the next level first? So what if I look at what's on the other side of the quantum jump and I see the vision and I see the house and I see my children laughing and I see the relationship and I see all of these things and I feel them. And, you know, we know about this law of attraction, use all of your senses and create the vision. And if I give that from a neurological perspective, I give that to my brain, I engage my limbic system and I engage the right side of my brain, left side of my brain, and I give that to my nervous system over and over and over and over again. Now it's no longer that big of a jump. Now it's more of a stumble. Now it's a lot easier for the nervous system to actually take the steps without the anxiety and the overwhelm and the second guessing.
Jody Lynn and I were having a conversation after last week's show. And after the guest had gone, just she and I were having a conversation. And I was sharing with her how one of my biggest personal challenges has been that I totally understand in conscious form, in theory, I totally understand that yes, when you focus on what you really want and you do it with belief and feeling and so forth, it works. The thing that amazes me is how often I can do that and I can still doubt it's going to work the next time. It's amazing to me how, I mean, I'm really good at just doubting it. I'm really good.
Can I say something about that?
Yeah, sure.
I wonder if there's an addiction to the doubt.
Oh, absolutely. There's no doubt about that. Yeah, there is a definite addiction. Yeah.
So if we're addicted to the emotion of doubt, then that also keeps us safe. And here's another thing, not to create a gender war here, but men are really good in their left brain. So they consciously understand things. And women, we have more of a tendency for the right brain to be developed. And for me, actually, when I was building my business, I was so tapped into my masculine and left brain. I forgot that I was a woman and I forgot my feminine energy and all of that. But that's for a whole nother episode. So, but my point is, with men, the thing that takes, that kind of unhooks from this addiction to doubt or to second guessing or to anxiety or to stress or any of the negative emotions, it's even more important to tap into the right side of the brain and engage the emotional, hormonal results that we're getting from the limbic system, right? So if I'm tapped into, say, freedom, love, joy, gratitude at the same time as I make the jump or consciously, take the steps, then I have a better likeliness to feel more integrated on the other side of the jump.
Well, I'll take what you said and I'm going to expand on it. Because I'm actually a fortunate person. I'm one of those rare people who actually can draw pretty easily from both sides of the brain and have been for a long, long time. It took me actually took an employer to show me that I had that ability. But once I had that, I realized I had the ability, like, cool, I got that. Yet even with that ability, I find that kind of along the line you were just describing, because there is a societal expectation that men are going to focus on the left side of the brain, that's where I feel comfortable. It's not that I have no ability to connect to the other side. I can connect to the other side. I just don't trust it as much because I get much more reward by focusing on the left side. Yeah. Because that's the way society rewards. It rewards the male for focusing on the left side. So, okay, hey, I'm here. Welcome to the left side of the brain. I love it.
And I think to a degree, our society, or I felt anyway, that over the last decade or so, maybe longer, that for women in corporate America, you know, in the business culture, it's hustle, it's left brain. Like, you're speaking my language, Nona, when you're like, I was more a man. I was like, I should have been born a man. Like, I curse you, feelings. Like, get out of the way. I can't do the things that they do because I'm emotional, and like, and I learned to shut that side down completely and then operate just like a man. I mean, it wasn't very successful in other areas of my life for a long time because of it. Yeah.
Try being a man in a heterosexual relationship and having a relationship with another man.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
All my relationships failed at that time. I really needed to learn to lean to the other side. And then that's when I found my husband. Thank God. But I tell him all the time, you wouldn't have liked me back then. Like, there's some really great skills that I, you know, cultivated, but you wouldn't have liked me. I was a bitch, and I was just so like sharp tongued and like just so rigid with everything. Like, I was just like a man, and I wanted to drive the car. Like, you wouldn't be driving the car. I would be driving the car everywhere, all the decisions. And he's a very masculine man, so that would not have worked. It would not have worked.
No. Yeah, exactly. And that's what's beautiful about humans, right? We not only can drive more from the feminine or drive more from the masculine, but we all have access to both. There are parts of, I have to integrate both my masculine and my feminine for my businesses to work. I mean, to do what I do now, it's required that I have both of those available to me and learn how to use each in what area of my life too.
And I think for men, we actually have a special challenge in the sense that women, as you guys have been pointing out, women have been pushed to adopt the left side, to adopt the masculine side. Men are continuing to be pushed to not adopt the feminine side at all.
That's a good point.
No matter how much we might actually try to do it, we don't dare admit to each other that we do it because we're just going to get hammered for it.
That is such a good point. Thank you for that. I never thought about it that way.
Oh, it's really true. And I'm one of the things that I've learned, I'm 2 years divorced. And what I've learned in those 2 years of kind of reintegrating back into the single side of things is it's even more dramatic among single men than it is among married men. It's like really, really big, really big. Like, if you do anything to demonstrate a feminine side in the single male realm, you get squashed.
Wow.
You get absolutely squashed. You better have a really good sense of yourself if you're going to show any kind of feminine side at all.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thankfully, I didn't have to stay single in this
for
too long. Yeah. But it's a real thing. But here's the thing, on the flip side of it, when you figure out what the polarity that works for you, whether you're dating or in a relationship, it is so magical. I mean, the depth, there's nothing like being in love and staying in love. And I mean, I love being married to my husband, and I love the relationship I have with him. And there's nothing like it. I'm a better mom. I'm a better business owner. I'm a better friend. The more I go along, the more I'm like, the answer is just love, unconditional, sweet love.
Right, beautiful stuff.
Like that.
Yeah, that's good. So, all right, now we have pretty well defined what we're talking about where this quantum leaping thing is concerned, which is actually a good thing. I think we kind of needed to demythicize it, if you will.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of angst and energy around it that we need to kind of get out of the way. So I think we've done that. It's not like it's totally fear-free, because we just described all the different fears that are involved in it. But at least now they're fears that we can, kind of wrap around. we can deal with those. Like, okay, yeah, I'm going to be doing something that's radically different from what I was doing before. I get it. I can handle. I may not be able to handle that part yet, but at least I can handle the concept. Okay, I get the concept. That works. All right, so we got that as a foundation, but now we have to start applying this stuff in our life. Let's talk about that piece, because that's where the rubber meets the road, right? That's where the challenge is.
Yeah. Do you have about like 3.5 days?
We got about 15 minutes. Can we do that?
We give it a try, because I do this in my retreats and literally walk people through the quantum leaps in the 3.5 days that we work together, or 10 years, right? 10 years. Right. So yes, this is where you get to be really intentional about your quantum leap, right? And I think I want to start by saying that you're going to evolve no matter what. I believe that humans evolve whether they want it or not. Either the universe will throw a lesson at you and you're going to have to learn how to deal with it, a struggle, a pain, or you get to create an easy and more joyful and loving experience for yourself. So the steps of a quantum leap are designed in such a way that they collapse the time in which you go from one timeline to the next timeline, right? Do it faster, do it better, do it easier, do it with ease, do it while you're enjoying your life versus the pushing of the boulder up the hill. So there's a lot of intention that needs to take place here. The first step being the vision, right? Having an unreasonable vision for life. And this could go in any category. Usually I tell people wealth, area of wealth, lifestyle, contribution, how you want to contribute to the world, the area of health, right? And all the different layers of it. And of course, then the area of connection, connecting to yourself, your higher self, your spouse, your kids, friends, clients, whoever. And the second step in the process is expanding the identity, right? For example, and we've heard people say this, identity drives your behavior, right? If you identify as a fit person, you will go to the gym. Like that's just the person who identifies as being a fit person, they go to the gym. The person who identifies as being a yogi, they do their yoga, they find time to get on the mat, right? The person who also on the other side of it identifies as I'm not good in business, then they're not going to take the actions that would make them good in business. So your behavior is driven by who you believe that you are. My belief system is that your identity is fluid, as in you get to choose who you want to be, because you came into this world and my parents happened to give me the name Nona, and it's convenient because if you called me something else, I might look around. But truly, there's no piece of my identity that I was born with. I picked up along the way some limitations, the blockages, all the things. So identity can be expanded and it can be intentional. So if I have this unreasonable vision for the next level business, this really loving relationship that I want to be in, or whatever the case might be, level of contribution or impact I want to have in the world, then in the second step, you're really defining the identity of the version of you that's already living there. So if I show up as that version of myself, what are her pieces of identity? What are her traits? What are the characteristics of her? What are the parts of her that, I should say it better, what are the parts of me that I need to let go of? What are the parts of me that need to die? Maybe the part of me that procrastinates or self-doubts or is in scarcity or feels like is not good enough or whatever. Those are the parts that need to go. And then the parts of me that, are confident or makes decisions really quickly or moves really fast. Or also physiologically, there's a ton of research on this, as in you talk differently. Walk differently. Your posture is wildly different. Your heart rate is different in different frequencies of the emotion. So in step 2, you're really you're defining. It's more of a contemplative journaling, perhaps, or typing it up. What is it? Who is it that you need to become, that you need to merge to? Now, in this step, I want to say the biggest misconception or kind of trigger for people is, are you telling me in this step or the next step? Are you telling me I have to fake it till I make it? Are you telling me somebody else? Right? So if you're listening to this or watching this and you're like, yeah, I had that thought, this is for you. What you are doing, especially if you have a vision, what you are doing right now is actually faking it. So you playing small in your limitation is faking it. What's real is the potential that you are actually born with, that you get to express, you get to practice in this world, in this one life that we get to live. So in step 2, you define who you want to practice to be. And in step 3, probably an easy kind of transition to that is, okay, how, no matter, I have this juicy life I set out, you're telling me to be in this, figure out who I need to be. And now you want, but I live over here in this 3D world. My bank account is empty. My relationship doesn't work, or whatever struggles I'm going through. Then step 3 is a way to integrate both of these worlds. So you go, oh, I figured out who I need to show up as, what my identity needs to be. Step 3, I'm going to embody her in my struggle. So today, when I wake up in the mornings and I grab my coffee and I'm drinking my coffee, I'm going to go, I wonder, the version of me that's already quantum leaped on the other side of the fear fence, wonder that version of me, how she drinks her coffee. I wonder in this argument, how she would show up in this conversation. I wonder how she would sit in this podcast. I wonder what her hair would look like. I wonder, what her posture would be like. So really embodying the version of you that you want to tap into. So it's like really getting intentional about those steps that are going to take you intentionally to that very specific, unreasonable, hopefully really authentic vision that you have.
What an interesting reframe that is.
Which part?
The way that you were describing the reframe was, first of all, you started with, let's redefine what's the fake part and what's the real part.
Yeah.
And you basically flipped it. You flipped it around so that the thing that you're in right now is the fake part, and the part you're moving to is the real part. That was a clever step right there. But then you took it one step further. You said, now that I know where the quote real side is and where the quote fake side is, now I can ask myself, well, how will the real side deal with this? How is the real side dealing with this? That's a really clever way to shift the whole mindset around and get you out of that place of, oh my God, I'm quantum leaping, I can't take this.
Yeah, this is fake. Like, it's real. Like, your emotions are, let's not not validate people for what they're feeling. But yes, absolutely. Absolutely. What's real is the desire that's been planted on your heart. That is just yours. And what I want in my life, than what Jody Lynn wants, than what Walt wants, are wildly different. And there's a reason for that. Yeah. So in that process, then the embodiment of the real stuff, the real deal, right? Showing up as the full potential in the day-to-day. I mean, you answer the emails. Oh, I wonder what she would write.
I think you probably do that, Jody Lynn, don't you? I think you already do that.
Some of that. I've never looked at it in that way, but something that's been on my brain a lot lately is the quiet moments and that presence right now, right here. What that conversation of what would she be doing, that higher self, that other version of me, how would they act, or what would they look like? Having those kinds of conversations, bringing that feeling into the now moment. I think it's so powerful.
So powerful. And the idea is just to practice it like you do your biceps curls, right? It's just the muscle to practice.
It's so funny because yesterday I've been working on taking more time. It's been like the journey over the last couple of weeks. I've had lots of people tell me to slow down, and I'm like, okay, I'm working on slowing down the way that I talk and the way that I walk, and being intentional and purposeful in those moments. But the battle of the mind is so real. Yesterday, the other day, my acupuncturist is like, you need to do some yoga or some stretching, or your back is just super tight and it's not going to get any better unless you start moving a little more. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I can do that. And then so I was thinking about it, and I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna stretch after I do this, or I'm gonna do a little bit of yoga. And then I was like, I don't have time. And then I thought, what the heck are you doing that you don't have time? You don't have 5 minutes to sit with yourself and eat. That's another one. Like my acupuncturist, he's a Chinese guy, Chinese medicine guy. And he's like, sit and eat by yourself. Don't do anything while you eat. Just digest. Allow the nutrients to absorb. And I'll sit at the table and I'll be like, all right, I'm eating. And then I'll take like 2 bites and then I'll like go to reach for my phone. No, don't do it. You don't need to. You're fine. But it's this battle of like, Jody Lynn, you can give yourself 5 minutes. The other day, I was like, okay, I'm getting my timer on. I'm going to time this 5 minutes. Like I have 5 minutes to give to myself. I do. Yeah. I'm doing it. And then I set the timer and like flipped over my phone and I was like, okay, it's only 5 minutes because my brain was panicking. Like I need to see what's going on in TikTok or Facebook or like all these dumb things that come up, but it's been this reframe in the smaller moments for me. So I love that you're talking about
that. Do you also find that, because I have tried what you just described there. And do you ever find that you set that 5 minute timer, then you look and say, okay, 4:50, 4:40. 4:30.
Totally. Totally. It's almost done. Like I try and just take a breath and like close my eyes and then it goes by faster. Like I feel like I can bend time and I'm playing with that strategy as I do things, but I'm distracted and there's a word, just like fractured between things because it's so ingrained to be doing a lot of things. Like I'm trying to game the system and just do more than what other people can do in 5 minutes. Like I'm cooking dinner and I'm, crocheting something. I don't know. I don't crochet, but like I would like, oh, okay. If I need to build a house, like I'm doing 2 things at once.
I'm kind of expecting that to be like a Facebook meme at some point. Jody Lynn crocheting while she's cooking dinner.
Like, exactly, right? Like starts a fire. Like, I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, you're like right on the target because how much of our culture and also for me personally, how I grew up is like I got rewarded by doing the thing. So my self-worth is tied up to all the things I do. So the more I multitask and the faster I go and the more things I do, then I feel better about myself, which basically means I'm not enough. Right. Mm-hmm. And one of the biggest challenges for me was to go from, I built these part-time things and now I want to live a 1 week a month lifestyle. Like now the idea of, sitting 5 minutes already a stretch. Now you're telling me once I had the vision for the 1 week a month lifestyle, you're telling me that I work 1 week, squeeze everything in 1 week and then take off 3 weeks. The first question, my nervous system goes, first of all, panic. Like, what the F are you going to be doing for those 3 weeks? How are you going to
dare you? That's what I heard. Dare you? People are going to think you're so lazy. I love this conversation because my nervous system is just going.
Yes, yours and mine too. And what a concept, right? Like to gift yourself the time, the present of presence, right?
Yeah.
And anyways, I know we're running out of time, so I want to give you the last step and not leave you there. But that's I feel like that's a whole nother episode of like how do you tap into the space of just being worthy without the doing. Oof, that's a whole nother conversation. Okay, so then the last step, so we got the unreasonable vision, we've got the identity, we've got embodiment, and then in the very last step, I asked my students, and there's a reason why this is the last step. You don't want to jump into this step until you have really mastered 1 through 3. But in the last step, you're really taking unreasonable actions. And unreasonable actions, they look different for me than they might look for Jody Lynn, than what they might look for Walter, anybody that's listening, because maybe for somebody it looks like, I do my first live on social media. For somebody else, it might be like, I take my social media I do it 10 times more. For somebody else, it might be, I'll just hire somebody to do it. So, but by saying it's unreasonable, it's saying it's unreasonable for your current identity. It's actually very reasonable for the next version of you that you have already defined and embodied anyways. So it should be easier to tap into that unreasonable action. And I will always tell people, take the actions based on where you are headed, not based on where you are right now. So if your relationship is crappy and you have this vision for the next level relationship, what actions would that version of you take? What actions do you need to take to go over there? Not, let's just do this right now because this is what we can do. More like, how can we expand the actions into that next level frequency so that we can quantum leap?
I think you're right. We're going to have another show so we can do more of this thing, because doing that in 3 minutes just doesn't do justice to it.
I agree. We did good. We went into so many different tangents that are all relevant, but they're so powerful. The feminine, the masculine, the worthiness. I mean, there's just so much in this realm.
Well, it's obvious why you do it as, what did you say, 3.5 days or whatever it was. You have, it takes a lot of time to work through all of this stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, trying to do it in an hour, we have fun trying to do it, but good luck.
Yeah, we did well.
Yeah, we did as well as we could within an hour. That's the way I like to look at that. But yeah, and as usually happens when we're really enjoying it, that hour flies by and like, oh God, it's over already. Mm-hmm. Oh well. So I guess we have to do our 3 things that we normally do at the end of every show. First and foremost, somebody wants to find you, Nona. How do they find you?
I think probably the best way, although they can Google me and find my website, but the best way to do where it feels more personal and resonates with me more is to maybe find me on Instagram or somewhere, social media, and send me a message. And if they do that, and if they say they mention this podcast, I actually have a 90-minute training. So that's another summarized version where I break down the 4 steps of a quantum leap. So if this conversation resonated, send me a message. I'm happy to send over the training. It's 90 minutes and it's totally free.
Beautiful. All right. Yeah. So we'll also include the web link. Jen will put the web link into the show notes so that we'll have an easy way for people to find you as well. Second thing I like to do, and this is something that I really enjoy, especially when I do it with Jody Lynn, because I have 3 shows I do a week, and Jody Lynn's my Wednesday partner, and she's really, really good at this. But I always ask her to kind of tie everything together that we've touched on, which is impossible to do, by the way, but she finds a way to do it. She's really good at it. And I'm really curious to see how she's going to tie it together today. So Jody Lynn, what have you been thinking about? How are you tying this conversation together?
I'm loving it. Oh my goodness. I mean, I'm a huge energy person. I'm a channeler. I believe in energy, spirituality. I believe in synchronicities. But today, Nona, I think that you were sent for me. I feel like you just blew the lid off of a bunch of things that I have been thinking, and I really truly see some of the blind spots that I've been having around taking my old identity and what built my first business into building the next, which makes sense why it hasn't exactly been working for me. But today I'm so thankful for the reminder for me and for everybody listening and watching that it's okay to have an unrealistic vision, an authentic, unrealistic vision, that will be the stepping stone to the next thing or the how, and that you were meant to have the dreams, the visions that land on your heart. And I am the self-proclaimed possibilities queen. So I believe that anything is possible. And this conversation today just really solidifies that sentiment, that anything is possible and that you can have it all and you can change and choose with intention and with that heart and embody all of it. And then you can build it and everything will come. So thank you for that reminder today.
Thank you so much. Yeah, this might be my favorite part of the show also.
Thank you.
Well, I kind of framed that by saying it was impossible to do, and then she just did it.
Beautiful.
So, and that's what usually happens. That's why I love it so much. Last thing I want to do is something that I've been doing for a few years now. I noticed a few years ago, because we live in the 21st century where we're now internet connected and we do things like Streamyard and Zoom sessions and so forth. We can talk to people around the world, which is a wonderful thing. I mean, I'm in Connecticut. Jody Lynn's in Canada, for goodness sake. I mean, you're now in the US, you used to be in Iran. I mean, just all these connections all over the place because of the technology. And along with that has been the fact that, well, because everybody is now kind of in a new self-promotion mode that they were never in before, we're putting out all this content. I mean, you come onto a podcast like this one and you share your stuff, and I'm sure you do it in other ways as well. And the thing that I noticed is that there's a crack that it all kind of falls through that we kind of ignore, which is we're putting out all this free content to people who we never find out what happens with them, and they're benefiting it in ways that we don't even know about, and we don't give ourselves any credit for it. And I think, well, we can change that. So Nona, on behalf of those people you've never met, never seen, never will meet, never will see, who are being impacted by you in ways you don't even know about, on their behalf, thank you for what you're doing, because you're making a difference in this world.
Aw, thank you. Okay, that might be my favorite part of this. That is so sweet and so important. Thank you for being so intentional about all of what you do, but this was really, really powerful, and it can be healing for your guests, because I would imagine that they have the desire to impact. So to hear that acknowledgement is really, really healing. Thank you.
You're welcome, and thank you for joining us. We're going to try to invite you back at some point too, because we got to carry on that conversation about the quantum leap.
Would love to.
Yeah, so good stuff. So thank you very much. Thank you, Jody Lynn. Thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.